Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it is finally time for us to review Untitled Goose Game on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the enigmatic Damien McFerrin and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's honk right into things. For a game that sees you controlling waterfowl and doesn't feature any robots, guns, or tortured subplots, it's incredible how much attention Untitled Goose Game has garnered since it was revealed way back in October 2017. Thanks to its unique visual style, whimsical setting, and instantly relatable protagonist, House House's sophomore title captured the hearts and minds of all that saw it, and the subsequent hands-on sessions from over the past few months have done little to reduce the level of hype. Quite the opposite. In fact, it actually became one of our most eagerly awaited Switch titles for 2017. Now we finally have the finished product in our hands, and it's everything we'd hoped it would be. It's a joy to play, a wonder to behold, and sticks in your mind long after you've finished it, which sadly won't take much time as longevity happens to be this particular goose's Achilles heel. Do geese have heels? Miles, run a check! Having said that, whilst it lasts, Untitled Goose Game is a complete and utter riot. A game that not only makes you laugh out loud, but also exercises your reflexes, brain power, and resourcefulness. The game begins with a gentle introduction which allows you to familiarize yourself with the controls. The A button causes the goose to pick things up with its beak, heavier items can only be dragged, whilst the Y button emits a honking sound which can be used to attract the attention of humans or make them jump and drop whatever it is that they are carrying, and believe you me, that's important. The B button causes the goose to sprint, which is an essential skill, but it is one that reduces your turning circle and overall responsiveness, whilst ZL makes it duck down, allowing it to pass through tight spaces or reach items on the ground. ZR causes it to flap its wings, L zooms the camera in, R zooms the camera out, and the minus button brings up your current list of objectives. These objectives are deliciously goofy and often heavily disruptive to the lives of the peace-loving people in the quaint English village where the game takes place. You're asked to perform tasks like creating a picnic from assorted items dotted around a garden, or dressing up a stone bust with various bits of clothing. Elsewhere, you must trick someone into breaking their neighbor's prized vase, or force an individual to pay for an object that they rightfully own. Whilst some of these objectives have clear pathways to success, there are some which can be tackled in more than one way, sometimes using items found elsewhere in the game. We're not talking Hitman levels of possibilities here, but the game certainly encourages experimentation. Whilst Untitled Goose Game was built as a stealth experience just after its announcement, remaining out of sight isn't as important as you might expect. Sure, there are times when hiding behind a bush and spooking a human is necessary, but you can often just run about causing annoyance in plain sight and still get the job done. There are no insta-fail stealth missions here, thank goodness. You do, however, get the chance to hide in a box, Solid Snake style. Each to-do item on your list is neatly summarized in a single sentence, and whilst there are some examples which could be seen as too obtuse, it's usually pretty obvious what is required of you. The challenge is manipulating both the people and the items in order to tick off that particular objective. Each completed task has a line drawn through it on your notepad, because geese definitely have stationery, we know, and never before has the sound of a pencil meeting paper sounded so rewarding. As you tick off tasks, Untitled Goose Game's sublime interface and fully realized world really come to the forefront. Your pesky winged avatar is a real joy to control, and thanks to some convincing and robust physics, objects react just as you'd expect them to. Balls roll down gentle inclines while solid items stack up upon one another fairly reliably, which is ideal when a challenge requires you to weigh down a set of scales, for example. Certain objects are a little bit annoying to manipulate and control, such as the aforementioned ball, which often feels like it has a life of its own, but using a combination of your crouching posture and the A button peck, you can usually get the job done. And whilst it's not possible to lose an item required for progress either either by accident or design. Even dropping something down the big tempting well in the center of the village simply results in it reappearing in the pond. You can exit the game and return all your items to their original locations without losing your to-do list progress, which makes things a little easier when you really get in a muddle and you can't recall where you left those bloody glasses. The game's village is divided into sections, which, once you've ticked off all the objectives, open up other areas. The whole village is interconnected thanks to a series of unlockable gates, which come in very handy later on when you're tasked with transplanting objects from one area to another. There's a nice degree of variety on display too. The opening garden gives way to a busier high street, which is superseded by some prim and proper terraced housing, and then a grand public house and restaurant complete with dartboard, delivery van, and angry landlord and landlady. The way in which all these locations interlink is very well done. Outside of the opening boot sequence, there are no load times to speak of. This is a seamless and brilliantly realized environment which, if you're from the British Isles like I am, will seem instantly familiar. According to the developer, the game's look was influenced by UK TV programs like Postman Pat and Thomas the Tank Engine. It's remarkable to think that the developers are actually based in Australia, you know, the other side of the world, and they managed to truly nail the look and atmosphere of your typical unassuming English hamlet. The music too is brilliant. It's context sensitive and reacts to on-screen action. When you're quietly stalking around and trying to keep a low profile in a flower bed or a bush, the audio drops down, but the moment someone spots you stealing one of their items, the piano-based tune swells and rises perfectly, lending that extra little bit of tension and urgency to proceedings, as well as being hilariously charming. Whilst we're on the topic of presentation, performance in both docked and handheld mode is excellent. There are a few instances where the frame rate dips a little, but it's never anywhere close to being game-breaking. Outside of the setting, one of the obvious key attractions to Untitled Goose Game is the fact that you take on the role of a really annoying bird. Whilst the checklist of tasks ensure that you're duty-bound to create mischief, just as much fun can be had creating your own brand of free-form annoyance. Indeed, when we handed the game to someone who had never heard of it before, we were surprised to find that instead of following objectives, they simply wandered about seeing what items they could steal and hurl into a nearby pond. As a sandbox of cheekiness, Untitled Goose Game scores very highly. It helps that there are numerous hidden objectives which can be unlocked by experimenting with the environment and the items found within. The world is just so utterly convincing, and so brilliantly governed by its own set of rules. Simply wandering around is in and of itself a pleasure. Watching the gardener diligently attempting to tidy up the massive mess you've so thoughtlessly created, a commendable trait that many of the human characters possess, is both gratifying and ever so slightly mortifying at the same time, which, at least for me, Alex personally, made it even tastier. While it lasts, Untitled Goose Game is a total riot, and not a single second is wasted when it comes to pure entertainment value. The maximum amount of amusement is extracted from its runtime, which, it pains to say, is perhaps a little too lean for our liking. When the credits rolled, we felt like we were just getting into the swing of things, and whilst there's a pretty robust post-game package, it doesn't expand the world in any way. When you consider the asking price of Untitled Goose Game, there's definitely an argument to say that it's not terrific value for money. Your initial playthrough can take only a couple of hours depending on how quickly you work out the solutions to the puzzles. Completing the post-game elements, which include finding all the hidden objectives as well as ticking off all the original tasks in each area in under 6 minutes each, which is a surprisingly stern challenge to be honest. You will add a few hours to that total, but it's possible to see all that Untitled Goose Game has to offer in quite a short space of time. That obviously counts against it, but the question remains, is the experience you have within those few hours enjoyable enough to justify the cost of entry? Well, we'd argue yes, because there's nothing quite like Untitled Goose Game on any market. Whilst they're two massively different games, we draw a comparison with Journey, a title with a similarly short runtime and price, but one that we'd heartily recommend to anyone and everyone regardless. Whilst we'd love to have seen more areas to explore or tasks to undertake, DLC we feel could fill that void, we enjoyed our time with Untitled Goose Game immensely. Untitled Goose Game boasts more inventiveness, creativity, and charm than a vast majority of titles on the Switch eShop, and offers a believable game world that's a real pleasure to explore, investigate, and of course, cause merry havoc in. Superb physics, excellent controls, surprisingly robust AI, and a unique presentation all combine to make this a real highlight in the Switch's library. It's only the brevity of the experience that lets it down, but this really is a case of quality over quantity. Oh lordy, it's time for my personal thoughts. Honestly, I don't have many. Really, this review just nailed it on the head, except, I don't know, I mean, I think the whole thing with the brevity, yeah, I'd like the game to be longer, but at the same time, I wouldn't want it to be too long. I wouldn't want it to get boring, if you know what I mean. There's something about wanting more at the end of a game, and that's actually quite a good thing, to be honest, because it shows just how good the game is. However, at the same time, I really wouldn't say no to some DLC. Other than that, this is probably one of, if not the most unique game I've played in about, oh god, years, like absolutely years. If you're looking at this and you think, that looks like fun, you're going to have a great time with it. You're going to have a fantastic time with this. I'd say just get it and swallow the cost and not worry too much about it and just have fun. I'm personally waiting for the inevitable sequel called Untitled Geese Game that has multiplayer mechanics. Thank you, goodbye.